Good evening, everybody. Hope your Wednesday's gone very, very well. I'm delighted to be joined by my wonderful co-host, Ollie Mann, who's looking very festive this evening.
Yeah, we've entered December. It's officially there's 12 days until Christmas. And so we're allowed to start talking about it. We're allowed to start celebrating it. And I've gone for my Christmas jumper today. How are you doing, Gab?
I'm very well, thanks. I actually thought the 12 days of Christmas started at a different time, but we'll go we'll go with what you got.
No idea. I've got absolutely, genuinely no idea when the 12 days of Christmas started. I only, literally, as you asked me the question, I looked at the calendar, noticed it was 12 days before Christmas, and then made the comment. There was no planning involved, so I'm happy to be wrong.
It's mid-December. We'll go with it. Thanks so much. Really looking forward to getting into your chat. First section we've got is on Huddersfield Town. It was actually pre-recorded. We spoke to the Annie Takes That Chance podcast. Right. So and if I can get the technicals right, and Matt joins us there. There we go. Matt from Annie Takes That Chance podcast on Huddersfield Town, take two. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. Just wanted to ask you about, it's a, sort of a strange period for Huddersfield because you're on a 4-game unbeaten streak, which in any other season you'd take huge encouragement from. But you've kind of needed that unbeaten run because of the progress made by the likes of Sheff Wednesday and QPR.
Yeah, there's two spins you can put on it. You can either say we're unbeaten in 4 or we've only won 2 in 13. So we do draw a lot of games. I think we've drawn the most out of any team in the bottom half. But in our situation, a point's always pretty good. We've been going through a really rough period with injuries. So points on the board is welcome. It just feels that the whole sense of the whole atmosphere around the place is just trying to muddle through until January, much as similar to what we do on our podcast, to be honest. It's just a case of muddling through until the transfer window.
At least you're honest. I suppose January is kind of going to be about getting key players back fit, like Jack Rodoni, but also I suppose hopefully strengthening the squad as well. Do you think the funds are going to be there for you to do that?
I think so. The main issue is obviously we had the takeover in the summer around June, but there are some new rules which I don't think are quite in the mainstream yet about financial forecasting, FFI, which has kind of meant that with our new owner Kevin Nagel hasn't really been able to go out and spend a lot of money or offer to spend a lot of money due to the forecast of the previous 12 months. So it's a situation whereby we've been unable to go out and spend money even if we'd want to at the moment. I believe some alterations to that have been submitted to the Football League. So hopefully come January, there's some money left because it's desperately needed. I think Huddersfield fans at the minute are quite fed up in the general demeanour. And really it's just 5 years of owners sort of kicking the can of investment down the road, if you like. Yeah. One or two of them have tried their very best to put money in. Dean Hoyle came back and he had to put a lot of money in just to keep Huddersfield Town bobbing along.
Do you think that, sorry, just to come in there, do you think Dean Hoyle coming back was almost a bit of a sign that Phil Hodgkinson wasn't quite getting everything right? Because, you know, you'd have thought in an ideal world that when that transition happened in 2019, that would be that, and that, you know, Huddersfield and Dean Hoyle would have gone their separate ways.
Yeah, I mean, the deal that, I mean, Dean sought Phil out. I think that's important to remember. He wanted a local owner to carry on and do similar things to what he did. I believe at the time there were more international consortiums that were interested in an ex-Premier League club or just fresh out of the Premier League at the time. But Dean wanted to kind of keep things going, and Phil, unfortunately, I have to be careful what I say, probably because his business went into administration. So we'll probably just leave it at that. But essentially, during COVID, his business, Pure Legal, went into administration, which meant he could no longer fund the club. And Dean, as a 25% stakeholder then at the time, because Phil hadn't actually bought Dean out 100%, only 75%, Dean had to come back in and kind of rescue the club at that time and put money in that he didn't really want to, I guess, at that stage. And during this process, Huddersfield Town are going through a process whereby they had a huge wage bill coming out of the Premier League, as everyone does, coming out of the Premier League to the Championship. So it's just a case of cut. And it's just, you know, too many too many things cut too quickly to try and get their football club on an even keel, and it's never going to be profitable, is it, in the Championship? But trying not to hemorrhage too much money, and that's essentially what Phil Hodgkinson tried to do, and it's what Dean tried to do. But that means that your future speculation in terms of players coming in at that point is low. You rely on frees, you rely on loans. I mean, one statistic is we've not bought a first team striker for money since Steve Mounier in 2018, and things like that are, we've relied
I
on
thought
free
you were going to say
transfers.
Andy Booth then.
Andy Booth, yeah. Do you know, it wouldn't surprise me if we had to play him at the minute. We've got that many injuries, but he was 50 the other day. I bet it'd still be decent in the air.
I'm sure he'd do a job in the air. Just get those crosses into him.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about possibly some of the other key players that Huddersfield are missing, and possibly the likelihood of players returning in the short to medium term. We've talked about Jack Rodoni previously. Who are the other ones that you're kind of itching to get back?
I mean, part of the issue with the summer is we were desperate for a striker. At every Championship club, I'm in a Championship content creators group, and everybody in there is going, "Oh, we need a striker, need a striker." And I'm sat there thinking, "You guys know nothing about needing a striker. We've needed one for years." And then,
You've got Jordan Rhodes on loan at Blackpool. Recall him?
Yeah. He wasn't a very Neil Warnock player, so Neil Warnock sent him to Blackpool. I mean, we could recall him potentially in January. Danny Ward is, like, say, trying to get back.
I don't think you can turn your nose up, though. In your position, you can't turn your nose up at a proven.
No, I'd bring him back. To be honest, I'd bring him back. I don't know if he's still. I don't know if he's perfect for Darren Moore's system and as a starter, but if you need a goal with 10 minutes remaining in the Championship, bringing on Jordan Rhodes is not a bad option, really, is it? So it's potential, but Huddersfield Town need a striker moving in, or two potentially moving into January, and to not get them in January would be, I think, pretty catastrophic.
How's David Kasumu getting on, Matt? Because I was kind of expecting a little bit more from him last season than maybe we got, because I was a really big fan of him from his time at MK. How's he been getting on in that sort of all-action midfield role?
He's another one who's been missing for months with our injury record. He's just pretty much come back in the last couple of weeks, and he was fantastic against Sunderland. He was really pivotal in getting the win at Sunderland. A little bit tired against Swansea then the following weekend, as you would expect, just coming back. But he was magnificent against Bristol City, and the goal we scored was all down to David Kasumu. He's got the ability to drive with the ball. He's got pace. He gets about. He tackles. Loves a yellow card. Absolutely loves one. But he gets in amongst it.
Johnny York.
Yeah, he's like Hog 2.0. It's really good. And watching them both together is a little bit of a guilty pleasure because they just kick everyone and it's great. So
you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, that's a real shame."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to. Who are the key players for Huddersfield? Whenever I go onto forums or talk to fans, it always seems to be Mikael Helik that's the big key man for Huddersfield at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, our strength is our ability to defend, and it has been for 12 months. I mean, I keep going back to the striker problem, and the problem is Mikael Helik's also our top scorer, and last season a centre back was also our top scorer. So therein lies an issue with Huddersfield Town, but it's also a strength in that Mikael Helik is an excellent defender. When you look at his statistics and you pull off the numbers from last season, he's up there with the very best in the league in terms of clearances, tackles, interceptions. He's a really good footballer, but we don't really want to scream that too loudly because he could probably play a little bit higher than 21st in the Championship. He's a top end Championship player, I think, Mikael Helik. But Matty Pearson and Tom Lees are kind of your weathered agricultural centre backs who will kick it, head it, and to be honest, they do a decent job for us. So that back three can be quite difficult to break down, and once you break them down, you've got to get past Lee Nichols or Chris Maxwell at the moment, and they're two pretty steady goalkeepers at this level. So that's our strength, but our weakness is going forward. Sorba Thomas has been excellent this season. He's really done well. At one point, I think about 6 weeks ago, he was 4th in the league for the most amount of key passes, which shows that he is pretty much the only creative outlet we have. He was missing against Bristol City, and we really missed that. I think our XG in the second half against Bristol City was 0.05. So that's a game that you don't want to watch back on iFollow.
Yeah.
So Sorba Thomas is really pivotal in that his set piece delivery is good. He's now decent in open play from crossing as well. That seems to have come on in the last 6 to 12 months. So he's really important, and so is Jack Rodoni. And he's a huge miss. Is Jack Rodoni at the minute? He's more of your your ball carrying box to box player, and he's just started popping up in the final third to get his toe end on a couple of things and scored a couple of goals. So Helic, Thomas, and Radoni are probably our three key players, with some able backup, I would say, from your likes of Pearson, Lees, and Nichols, etc.
That was Matt speaking there from the Annie Takes That Chance podcast. We'll bring in Rich from the Blue Monday podcast on Ipswich Town in just a moment. But I wanted to ask you, Ollie, based on what we've heard there from Matt about, especially in light of this was recorded obviously before the defeat to Preston North End last night, in which Stephen Chicken, the local journalist, wrote an excellent article on some of the problems at Huddersfield, but it was quite a poor showing from them. Are you worried about Town from what we've heard there in terms of their relegation?
Yeah, I'm very worried about Town, to be honest, in terms of their relegation. You know, like you say, last night was a really poor performance. We did not really see much from them at all. And I think I've seen quite a bit of... I know you don't judge off Twitter. I know you don't judge off X. And I know that you don't go out and you don't judge the entire fan base's beliefs. But I'm seeing an increasing number of people starting to cast doubt on Darren Moore as manager. You know, he's not been there that long. And yet we're seeing lots of comments and statements about he doesn't have a clue. There were some reports that when he was going to make a sub yesterday, he'd called over, I think it was Dwayne Holmes, I could be wrong. He called somebody over to sort of give them some instruction. And the crowd behind him and shouted, "Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about." This kind of stuff all just increases a little bit of concern that's going on at the minute for me on Huddersfield. And I think QPR have improved so much. They really look like a team that's ready to take themselves forward, get out of it. I think Wednesday looked like, it hurts, but Wednesday looked like a team that are improving, that are likely going to pick up quite a few points between now and the end of the season. You know, I think their numbers are projecting them as sort of 11th since Danny Röhl has come in. And so they're another team who are going to be a lot better than the standard we've seen so far. And so to me, that really puts Huddersfield in a lot of trouble, because if that's two teams below them who are going to sort of really improve, I don't see the teams above them getting significantly worse in the way that Huddersfield would need. So yeah, they're concerning for me, and I'm starting to be increasingly worried, shall we say.
Yeah, I completely agree, Ollie. And I hate to correct you, but just for the purposes of accuracy, Dwayne Holmes is actually a Preston North End player. But I will let you off because he's not played an awful lot of football and he's played for Huddersfield twice. So there we go.
Premier League fan doesn't know what he's talking about, does he? You know what I mean?
just for the purposes of accuracy. But I think you make some great points there. I'd like to bring in Rich here from the excellent Blue Monday podcast. Richard Woodward, how are you?
Good, mate. How are you? Long time no speak.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for your time. Obviously, that 2-1 win over Watford, you're in a buoyant mood this evening.
I am giddy. We had a bumper live stream on Blue Monday last night, and the buzz around Portman Road at the moment is, we've had the calendar year, Gab. We are now 100 points, 100 goals for the 2023 calendar year. It's been an immense time. And I think Ipswich Town fans, quite rightly, are just reveling in it, because a lot of pundits are saying the bubble's going to burst, they're going to run out of steam. And maybe that's the case. So I think a lot of us, having had, a decade or more under Marcus Evans of literally nothing happening, maybe a slow spiral, now we are definitely the right fan base to enjoy this moment, and we are definitely doing that, Gab.
Certainly are. Ollie, what do you think about Ipswich's increasingly? I think we're past the point of arguing whether Ipswich are serious contenders, because I think they've proven now that they are in this. But I suppose the question is, can they stay in that top? Will they stay in that top two?
It's one of them where, you asked me this question. I think it was during the last international break. We had a representative from Ipswich, we had Leicester, we had Leeds, I think, and Southampton. And we really talked through what we thought. And at the time I said that I thought December was going to be a really crucial month for Ipswich. I thought they'd probably drop points in some of these really big, difficult away games like Middlesbrough, like Watford. And I thought that had really opened the door for Leeds being able to catch up, and that I thought Leeds would probably overhaul them between then and the end of the season. What we've seen is two fantastic wins for Ipswich, away at Middlesbrough, away at Watford, and they just look like the real deal to me now. And I think if I could go back 6 weeks, I would correct myself. And I would say that actually, I think at this stage, it's hard not to make Ipswich the favourites to take one of those two automatic promotion spots, because with a 10-point gap, it's hard to see how they drop enough points for someone to catch them up. Leeds are going to have a hell of a run if they're going to be the team that do it. So, yeah, I think you're right to be a bit excited today, a bit, Rich.
Tell you what I really love about this Ipswich team, Rich, is the fact that you seem to be able to thrive with those overloads on the left-hand side, and different players at different times. Sometimes it's Leif Davis getting forward. Sometimes it's his relationship with Broadbent. Sometimes I think Morsey and particularly Luongo sort of overload the flank. You might even have Chaplin dropping in there. But then I think what you've got on the right-hand side, which I think is incredibly important, is a 1v1 specialist in. Sometimes it's been Wes Burns, but last night it was Amari Hutchinson. For me, he provides that injection of pace and unpredictability, I think, as well, because he can go either way. And I love about this team that even if you do everything you can to stop that left side of the attack, which is such a strong point, you've still got the option to switch it over, and Hutchinson can sometimes see that damage.
Yeah, and even better, Gab, is that Sam Morsey will pop up and score a 80th minute goal as well, or Massimo Luongo, as Blackburn fans will know, will lash one in from the edge of the area as well. There are goals throughout this team, and that's one of the things that people are really keen to lavish praise on Kieran McKenna, and quite rightly. He's done an absolutely stunning job at Ipswich. The patterns of play are so ingrained now that the squad knows it, Gab. It's not about a first 11 at Ipswich, as you rightly say. We made 5 changes last night, maybe a little bit of rustiness amongst the personnel that he brought in defence. But you mentioned Hutchinson, Marcus Harness came in and made an impact last night. There are goals around this team, and the fact that McKenna has kept the whole squad engaged and involved in this, that everyone understands their role, and that we set out to win matches as well. And we've all of us at various times in watching our clubs have had managers whose philosophy is, let's get the win by any means necessary. And if that's a grotty 1-0 from a set piece, then so be it. And as football fans, when it's great and you're winning, you kind of overlook that stuff. But the fundamentals there are just of these attacking patterns, Gab. You mentioned the creativity of Davis. Our top scorers are Connor Chaplin and Nathan Broadhead. Our striker, George Hurst, is slowly catching them. But he's about creating the goals, and this philosophy, the strategy that McKenna's got, it's really working for us. And at the same time, it's fantastic to watch.
What do you think the impact is going to be? So I said there, I've gone out on a limb again because I flip-flop like that. So in a couple of weeks,
fine. You can do that. That's fine.
I'll go for Leeds again. It's my prerogative as an idiot online. But I think as part of that, I think the thing that's always concerned me about Ipswich, you've just talked about it there, about a really exciting style of play, how it's fantastic to watch, it's really enjoyable. Does it concern you still with the sort of goals conceded? It does seem to be getting better. Obviously, these last few performances have seen you not conceding maybe the same number of goals that you had been before the latest international break. But do you still think it's the defence that maybe you'll be targeting to try and get a little bit more secure? Because when it gets nervous, when it gets tight, do you think that's what's going to have to change to really cement this position and make sure you do go on to get promoted?
I don't know, Ollie. I totally understand the stance. We conceded for the first time, I think, under McKenna, a goal last night from playing out of the back. Our keeper, Hladky, is excellent with his feet. And, we were praising it throughout the season. And at Borough, there's this viral clip of him controlling the ball and passing it in the same touch from just inside our half, So I kind of think McKenna has, when he first came in at Ipswich, his first job was to make us really difficult to score against, and therefore it was kind of 1-0s and 2-1s, and we started to evolve the patterns, and therefore got more attractive and scored more goals. But actually, it was a team that was built on a solid foundation, and I think McKenna has realised that at championship level, to score goals and to win matches, you have to be a bit more open, and therefore I kind of feel like it's there's been goals obviously that you don't want to concede, and you don't want to have to win matches 3-2 and 4-3, etc. I don't know, if you're going to do that anyway, it's better than a 1-0, frankly. But as a spectator, so I think there is a little bit of, it's not method in the madness, as it were, but I think it's an inevitable consequence, and I don't think we're going to change it. And nor do I think it's dysfunction in our part. I think it's just a case of we've still got a League One team in transition, really. The team, the players, apart from Tuanzebe and Williams last night, were League One players, and we're up against a higher caliber of opposition too, and you've got to factor that in. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that situation, and the clean sheet at Borough kind of suggests that we've figured that out a little bit. A few iffy moments at Watford, shall we say, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Leeds and Leicester games coming up, and whether we are too open against them or whether McKenna adjusts anything. But for now, Ollie, I think we're okay. I think we're over that kind of hump of conceding and maybe a few too many goals.
That would be the one thing that would maybe I say concern me about the Leeds and Leicester games. I think the attitude that Ipswich fans have towards the season of just kind of enjoying the journey is exactly right. At the same time, I think one of the challenges that those games would bring is that if you are going to be quite open in the way that you've described and very sensibly as well, is it going to be a case of where both teams are actually quite open, but actually the opposing side have more international, big money quality that might make the difference in those sort of games?
Yeah, it's a fair shout, Gab. We've played Leeds at home, lost 4-3. And I think McKenna's perspective, and I might be wrong on this, is that if you make the games really open, you give yourself an opportunity to sneak it. And given the goals in the team that we've talked about, spread throughout the attacking positions, Chaplin, Broadhead, Hurst, and even midfield, then actually, if you make it a kind of a basketball match, you actually maybe give yourself a better bet than if you sit back and try and contain and get picked off, because quality players like that will pick you off. We've seen it with players just pinging one in from range. That will happen given the caliber of opposition. So if you suddenly bring the opposition onto you and then counter and break, you never know. You might be on the right side of a 1-goal victory. It just happens to be a 3-2 or a 4-3. So I quite like that logic, but I do agree with you that maybe a little bit risky, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously risky, but do you know what? It's just really refreshing.
Yeah, it is.
It's just really refreshing to hear it. It's not I saw United get promoted last season, and we were just towards the end. It was very attritional. It was very, let's just get through 90 minutes and not lose. And to hear you talk about it and to sort of hear that kind of perspective on, you know what? Let's, a little bit like Liverpool, let's just create chaos and we will thrive in that because it gives us the best opportunity to create chances and to force the other team into positions that maybe they're not used to. Maybe they're used to playing a low block. They're used to teams sitting in, and also League One defenders ultimately will make a mistake the more defending you force them into doing. Exactly. So maybe taking that pressure off. Yeah, it's just really refreshing and I like it. I want it to do well.
And to be fair, it's not with the same home and away. We are more swashbuckling, if that's the word, easy for me to say, at home compared to away. We have more clean sheets, I think, away from home than we do at home. So I think there is a little bit of acknowledgement by McKenna that we can't go all guns blazing. And we've had one game, West Brom, where essentially they were too big and physical and clever for us, and outsmarted us. And you have those games, guys, but that's been a rare freak, that game. We bounced back from that with 4 wins on the bounce, including a clean sheet at Borough, and we gave Watford a goal head start as well and still beat them. So
do you know what, Rich? I'm so glad you've made that point, because I would also make the distinction, although Ipswich at home defensively imperfect for the high standards they're sort of setting themselves, I would make a distinction between themselves and maybe Middlesbrough, because whereas there's certain teams in the Championship, I would say Southampton I'd have put in this category for a certain period, where they were just so wide open on turnovers and so sort of vulnerable that they were quite easy to play through. I think with Ipswich it's a case of they can sometimes make mistakes as a consequence or a byproduct of how they play. But I actually think that most of the time when I watch Kieran McKenna's side, they actually have a plan for what to do if they were to lose the ball as well. They seem to have that balance of one player behind the ball, one player stretching the play, another coming short. and they seem to be able to maintain those patterns really well. And that's where I would probably make a bit of a distinction from maybe some of the other teams.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that Michael Carrick and Kieran McKenna are schooled in the same kind of strategy and tactics. And I said when McKenna came in at Ipswich, his first job was to make us defensively more solid, and we look and feel like a League One version of Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough. We've come up. We have to give a huge amount of credit for McKenna in realising, I don't know if it was luck or design, the momentum, the familiarity of the squad having come through the League One promotion race together, that you don't want to break that apart, and that's helpful too. But I think McKenna's just realised that his best bet of getting success is being a bit more open, perhaps. And yeah, the consequences, you're not going to keep as many clean sheets, but equally, we're going to find ways to score goals. And as you say, Gab, those fundamentals, those patterns of play just keep unlocking teams that we're expecting to lose against. The whole game sticks out for me, particularly, a team that was on, I think, 6th at that point. Got a big fan of Liam Richardson. I probably didn't give him the credit pre-season that you had, Gab, when we talked about, prospects of teams, and we smashed them 3-0, and it could have been much more. And just these incisive patterns of play. And yeah, in terms of the debate about will we run out of steam? Unless someone can figure out a way to stop us playing the way we are playing, then it's difficult. How do you stop us? And what's more, January window's coming up, Gab. We'll probably strengthen. We'll probably not bring in 5 or 6. We'll bring in 1 or 2. But this team...
What 1 or 2 do you need then, Rich, do you reckon?
I think we need a central midfielder and a striker. At the moment, there's a lot of burden on George Hurst, who's, big shout out to George Hurst. Leicester fans probably quite happy to let him leave in the summer.
Yeah.
Unproven to their perspective, I guess, at Championship level, failed to score in a couple of loan spells.
Imagine if he led Ipswich to the title at Leicester's expense.
Yeah, and stranger things have happened. And his graft and effort is just second to none in terms of strikers I've seen. That
I tell you what, though, I love his deft little flicks as well.
Yeah.
Those subtle little flicks. I think they've not. It's as if it's not quite stood out in other teams where he doesn't get the kind of service that brings that out of him. And he is 6'3", which I think has almost gone against him at times in his career. But I love the sort of subtlety of touch he's got. It's beautiful.
Yeah, 5 assists, 6 goals, scores all types of goals as well. But he is the only real, in terms of the logic behind Ipswich are going to fall away. If George Hurst gets injured, then, or someone, Premier League team chucks 30 million at us in January, then that's an issue, I think, potentially. So I think the drop off to Freddie Ladapo and Dane Scarlett, who are the alternative options, I think is just too great at the moment. So you need to bring someone else in and give George Hurst a break sometimes, because at the moment he's playing, it used to be 60 minutes and you bring on Ladapo or Scarlett. And McKenna's realised he can't really do that. So now it's 80 minutes and he's going to be knackered over Christmas, poor guy. So good to get him some backup. And similarly, Sam Morsey and Massimo Luongo are no spring chickens. Unbelievable central midfield partnership at this level. Jack Taylor is also involved in there as well, but maybe not as defensively sound as Luongo and Morsey. And therefore, again, because Morsey's kind of walking now this tightrope on 9 bookings, by the way. This guy mentioned it a million times last night, and quite rightly. He's done that before. He's kind of got to 9 bookings and managed to last sort of 6 or 7 games before the cutoff has arrived. But he'll play for Norwich, which is all we needed, really. But yeah, he needs someone, he needs a long-term successor in that role. And I think Jack Taylor's got a role to play in the team, but it's not the Morsey role. And I think so we need someone coming through who can give him some backup.
Yeah, back up to Morsey. That certainly makes sense. Rich, I think you know what I'm going to ask you next. East Anglian derby coming up on Saturday. First time in what feels like forever that Ipswich would go into an East Anglian derby as such clear favourites. Almost feels like the role reversal of 18-19.
Well, up the last 20 years, Gab, probably. But
last 20 years. You must be like 90% excited, I would imagine.
Yeah, you know me. I'm always a little bit anxious, a little bit wary, and particularly as I mentioned, we come off the back of some really confident victories, so it's really good. I'm sure, in fact, I'm certain, because Ed Sheeran crashed McKenna's post-match last night, which was fantastic.
I did see
giving it the big one over Elton John, as you do.
He stole his glasses as well.
Did he? Well, he gave him an Ipswich Christmas jumper as well, so hopefully he'll be wearing that. But I think Ed Sheeran kind of went in there all guns blazing, kind of confident, millennial that he is. And McKenna kind of said, we're not talking about wins and what we're going to achieve. We're just focused on the process. And if you want any manager in the dugout for an East Anglian derby, it's Kieran McKenna. What's more, this squad is not stained by the abject failure in these matches that I am and, the players of the past are. So it's a clean slate in that respect. And I think probably the thing that gives me some reassurance is that typically in the last few matches between us and Norwich, which have obviously not gone our way, Norwich have been the clear favourite. They've been the better team. Let's be honest, I've got to say that. And it's gone to form. And therefore, I'm kind of hoping it goes to form on Saturday. And I'm really buzzing for it, Gab. Whereas, maybe a few weeks ago, a little bit more trepidatious, but yeah, it's a really interestingly poised match and one for the neutrals, I think, to keep an eye on there. And hopefully we do the business. Hopefully it's a really boring routine victory, but I suspect there'll be fireworks.
Absolutely. Certainly a lot of fireworks at Portman Road this season, Rich. Thanks so much for your time to unpack it all and for joining us, and keep up the great work, mate.
Good to chat to you guys. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks, Rich. Delighted to bring in our next guest, which is Dan Ainsworth from the wonderful Rovers Chat. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Gav. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, a bit of a routine victory, I think you'd say, for Blackburn against Bristol City. Made it a little bit difficult for yourselves in the second half, and might not be a game that makes the highlights reel at the end of the season. Blackburn on course for just to finish on 68 points by current sort of projections, I guess, in terms of points per game, 69 points last year. So you're kind of at about the same level. Is that how it's looked, sort of being there at the games every week?
Yeah, it feels like that, really. It feels like the worries of last season are kind of the exact same, really. We're missing, I know we've got Sammy Smodic on 14 goals, but I think we're missing that clinical edge that, again, cost us last year, and it was the thing we bemoaned after the final game last year. So, yeah, it feels that way. It feels we're just in that pack of teams that are really good one week and then pretty poor the next, and ultimately, I think that's where we are. We'll finish anywhere in that 7th to 13th bracket, as far as I'm concerned, unless January sees us magically find some money and pull out a good striker. But I don't want to hold out any hopes for that.
I wanted to ask you about Scott Wharton, Dan, because it's been a difficult 2023 for him. He spent a lot of it behind Dom Hyam and Hayden Carter in the centre-back Blackburn Rovers pecking order, and sometimes he's not even been in the matchday squad. Had a couple of moments go against him as well. So how good has it been to see him in form for Rovers at the moment?
Yeah, Scott Wharton, like you say, I'll be honest, it wouldn't have shocked me if he'd have left in the summer just gone. He is a Blackburn lad, so that kind of kept me on the side of him staying. But I were half expecting him to go, or half expecting him to at least have a loan. And to see him actually performing and doing well in the absence of Don Hyam's been brilliant. I don't think out of the three of them, the playing style probably suits him the least. He's not made for that. He's more what you call a traditional centre-back of get up in the air, head it out. If the ball comes through, just boot it up as far as he can. But he's adapting to the play, really. And it was nice to see him score yesterday. Nice to see Adam Wharton assist it as well. A bit of a brother connection there. Yeah, it's been really pleasing to see him, especially given Rovers' centre-back was and the fact that we've only got 4 centre-backs this year. Just delighted for him, really, because like I said, local lad, you want to see them do well. I think you want them to do well even a bit more, don't you, when they're your local lad and they support the club. So just happy for him and happy that we've found a way that we can actually use him in this setup, because that was my biggest worry. Can he play this passing style? But luckily it's going well so far.
Certainly is. I want to talk to you about the signing of Sondre Tronstad, Daniel, because he was excellent against Leeds, got man of the match as well against Bristol City. Does he look like another sign of good, promising Blackburn recruitment?
Oh, he's incredible. I love him. Absolutely love him. He's come in and I think we expected a lot from him, given the fact he'd made over 100 appearances in the Dutch league. It's not a bad league at all, is it, to come from? So he's come and just give us solidity. His role in the team and the role that we used to ask Lewis Travis to play, is that just break the play up and give it to someone alongside you who can play them passes. And he does that, but I think his passing sometimes goes under the radar. He gets us moving again. He's literally that defensive wall, win the ball back, give it out to someone like Sammy Smodic, to give it to Sigurdsson, someone that can maybe add that bit of quality to get it forward. He's been a real good addition, and he's the first name on the team sheet now, which when at the start of the season he couldn't even get in the matchday squad at times. We dropped him down to the under-21s because he was struggling to adapt. He's just been such a revelation in that midfield, and he lets also Adam Wharton do what he needs to do in his role, which I don't think any other midfielder does that, because Wharton's always been asked to do more. So Tronstad's been brilliant for both Rovers and for Adam Wharton's development.
Ollie, I suppose on paper it's a decent season for Blackburn Rovers, but after just missing out on the playoffs last year, expectation always kind of comes with that. How do you think Blackburn Rovers fans should be feeling about what they're seeing at the moment?
It's an interesting one. It's a bit of a bizarre one, because I'm sure that sort of a week ago, after the performance at Hillsborough, you'd have been thinking, "Oh God, this is terrible. What are we even doing?" And so I know that there's going to be frustration in there, and I think you're right about that expectation. But I think actually what happened over the summer was really interesting, because obviously Jon Dahl Tomasson wasn't particularly happy over the summer. He made lots of noises about how he thought this was going to be a step backwards this season, about how he wasn't happy with how the summer had gone, and he really did start to show his frustration. And I know that in my predictions, Gab, you'll remember I had Blackburn down in sort of 19th. You know, I'd really bought into this sort of negative messaging that was coming out of the club. And so I think with that maybe brought a reduction in the expectation. I know Dan will obviously correct me if I'm completely out of order on this, but for me, that seems as though it gives a little bit of an expectation correction, so that they know that the target's not necessarily going one better than last season and making it into that 6th spot. But actually, I see this as really positive progress. And I think that actually, if they can keep to the plan, and I think if Blackburn can continue to develop, then they will start moving forward. It seemed like a positive position to be in. So from my perspective, I think this is a positive season. It feels as though, given what was happening over the summer, to be even in and around that sort of top half picture is progress and is a positive season. But Dan, tell me I'm talking rubbish and why it's rubbish and you should have won the league.
You're absolutely right. No, you're spot on there, Ollie. This is it. This is what I think the fans recognise with Jon Dahl, that we've had this summer where you lose your main striker. You lose Bradley Dack, whose influence was going down on the team, but he was always that option off the bench to get that go back, and you lose Ayala at centre back. So we all sat there in the summer, especially when we didn't get that striker on deadline day. We did get a striker, but we didn't get a striker we knew would get double figures. Yeah. We all sat there a bit worried, but no, I completely agree. And the fact we're putting a new playing style in as well this season, to be where we are, I said, you said in your predictions, I think I was 16th or 17th for Rovers. I were happy to kind of not be in that bottom 8 that kept getting dragged in, and just sit above, and maybe, obviously, because we know how close the gap gets anyway, be 12th or 11th come the end of the year. But where we're sat now, had a bit in your hand off at the start of the year. It's frustrating to watch at times, don't get me wrong, but we always have been and we always will be. So, yeah, nothing that's new in terms of being frustrating.
No, that seems to be pretty sort of typical. One player who I wanted to sort of just get thoughts on is Andrew Moran, obviously coming on loan. I think he's from Brighton. And he does seem to have been, when you're looking at creativity in the squad, obviously you've got Schmodic scoring the goals, but it does feel as though that creativity is maybe where there's development to be done. What's Moran's impact been like? And do you see him as being a big player second half of the season, and that he might be one of those who goes on to be one of these out of nowhere players for Brighton? Or where do you see his development going?
Moran's been really impressive. I think he went under the radar a bit. He's on double figures for goal contributions already. He's come into this side, and I think he's struggled at times due to not playing men's football ever before. Like yesterday, he was quite poor, but he wasn't poor because he didn't have the talent. He was just poor because he was knackered. Like, he looked completely out of it. So
I know the feeling.
Yeah, I know what he feels like. But Moran's been really good. He offers something out wide that isn't what your traditional winger would on the other side, because we've always gone for one winger that's a bit more technical and then one winger that's got that pace. So either Markande or Sigurdsson or someone like that on that side. So he's just offered a balance and he's really grown into it. For me, he's got a big future ahead of him. I do think Brighton will actually use him next year because they just always pull him out of nowhere, don't they? I hadn't heard of him before this year, I'll be honest. And he's another Brighton one that they've pulled out. So, yeah, I think he's a big future ahead of him. He just needs time. I think he's got the ability overall. He just needs maybe feeding in. His issue this year at the club is we don't have anyone to swap him with. And that's the main issue with him, that we've got probably, I'd say with 14, no, when everyone's fit with 16 players, I'd say that we can constantly rotate with and I'd be happy and really confident in the role they're doing. But 3 or 4 of them are out at the moment. So it's kind of going around, play again and again.
And when you think about it, 16 is quite a tight number as well, isn't it? Because, like you say, it's not like 8 or 9 injuries sort of blows you out of water. It's 3 or 4 that could really cause problems and maybe add a bit of stress or, make players sort of play a larger number of games than maybe that would be ideal. But it sounds like Moran's having a fantastic season, Dan. Be great if you could get your black book out and sign him. But I
don't know where that one is coming from.
But I wanted to ask you about Sammy Smodics as well, Dan, because although it wasn't an absolutely stellar performance from the team against Bristol City, there was a lovely moment from Smodics where he produced a bit of skill to sort of fashion himself, fashion a chance, and then I think there was the goal from Arnaud Sigurdsson was a great finish as well. So those two seem to be able to play in tandem, don't they?
Yes, Smodics is, we discussed last time how much he's impressed, and he had an incredible November, 6 goals in 4. He's got a really strange role in this side that when he doesn't perform, it feels like he's been terrible. When he doesn't perform, that's obvious. When he doesn't get a goal involvement, it feels like he's been terrible in a game. But I think that's the risk you take with the way he plays. When you look at yesterday, that assist, and then he was really involved. Sheff Wednesday away with the same, wasn't really involved. He got his goal and suddenly he's everywhere and you can't stop him. The way he links up with Moran and Sigurdsson, like you mentioned, and even whoever's up top, he's just really become this point of what Rovers need. I think he's already doubled his best ever goal tally at championship level, which I remember when we signed him, I said, why have we signed him? He's only ever scored 6 goals. And then this year he ends up proving me wrong, as always happens. So just really glad for him. I'm just really glad that he's found a role in this side, because the way he started at the club felt like we just put money down the drain. We spent 2 million on him, which felt like a massive risk at the time and still feels, quite a lot of money, because the last time we spent that must have been, it'll be Sam Gallagher or Ben Brereton Diaz, so it's not often we spend it. So just delighted for Sammy with his impact. And for me, the sky's the limit in terms of goals this year. He could easily hit 25. It wouldn't shock me. I think he'll get to 20 and he'll be very happy with that. But he always wants to push on. Plus, we've got the Ireland situation of he hasn't been in the last few squads because of personal issues. Some rumours were about it being with the Ireland manager as well. So they're, he'll be wanting to impress their new manager. So, there's a lot for him. I think we forget how old he is as well compared to the rest of the squad. 27, 28. Coming up to his peak, can Rovers get the most out of him?
You don't normally see that, actually, Dan, because normally, the players get the bigger moves when they're sort of under 25 rather than sort of 25 or older. So I think that's a really interesting point. But what I do like about this Blackburn side, although we've often discussed on this podcast, Dan, the fact that you've not got that goal scorer, that Adam Armstrong, that Ben Brereton Diaz, I actually think that if you could find one in the next couple of transfer windows, you're actually in a better position to put one into the team for not having had one in a strange way, because it's like you've got used to playing without an out goal scorer. So other players have taken on a bit more goal scoring responsibility themselves, as opposed to hanging your hat too much on one player.
I think we're in a really strong position. I do. If we can keep hold of John Doyle Thomason, and I'm not saying we have to add that 20 goal season striker because we can't afford it. Not many clubs in this league can. We've just got to go for the plan we're going for, which is spend these 300, 400 grand on foreign strikers and hope one of them has a Morpay season, has a season that just happens. And do you know what? It might take 6 to 12 months to get them into it because we found that, like I say, Smodics were poor first 6 months. Tronstad really struggled the first few months here. And my hope's genuinely that we can either give Semir to Lovic the game time from there to kind of get in, and then next year we look and say, right, come on now, now's your time to get in there. Like
has he shown flashes, Telalovic?
We've not seen much of him at all. You know, he's barely played more than 10 minutes. He's been in the 21s. John Doe said that he's trying to get him used to game time at this level and the physicality, because I think when we've seen him play, that's been the issue, that he'll try and go forward and he's straight away knocked off it. So I think he struggled to adapt, but you can't adapt without that game time. And that's the issue for him, that Rovers needs results, so we can't give him game time too much. So, and we're also trying to balance the fact that he has to play, so we'd rather leave him out the matchday squad like we have a couple of times and playing behind closed doors or playing for the 21s. So it's just, for Semir, it's a matter of just getting used to it. I think we're just going to try and feed him in across the end of the year. His ideal situation, Semir, is that Rovers are in a dead rubber with a month to go and he gets that game time, but obviously we'd much rather go up. So it's that issue of when do you give him that game time, and I don't see it coming. Harry Leonard's getting it. Sam Gallagher will be back soon. Sammy Smodics has played up front ahead of him. Niall Ennis got his first start yesterday, so he's already, well, we're talking 5th choice already. So Rovers have just got to hit the jackpot with someone, or have a Harry Leonard and give him that game time and then let him get the goals. We don't need a 20-a-season striker. I think if we could add a 10-a-season striker into this club now,
that fits into your style and does what you want from your centre forward,
we'd be getting there. And that's it. That's the thing that I don't feel this side is too far off, which is the frustrating part when you can't add to it. But it's the manager that worries me. Every job that comes up, he's linked with strongly, and we keep watching the manager odds whenever one comes up. So hopefully, you know, we can keep hold of him. That would be the biggest piece of business in the next year. Keeping hold of John Dale Thomason, for me, would be the best thing we could do.
Do you think you will, Dan?
No,
I
really don't. It's the financial situation. When you're in a club and we had this plan all summer, and then suddenly the money's just taken from under his feet, I can't see him stay. I think some job abroad will come up that's bigger and better than Rovers and offers him a chance to maybe move nearer to home as well. I just don't see it. I'd love to be wrong, but I just can't see John Doe staying, unfortunately.
What do you think, Ollie? I mean, and do you think that we've talked with Dan previously about some of the structural changes that Blackburn have made off the field in terms of how they go about things? Are they possibly better placed than they were to find a good manager if Jon Dahl Thomason left?
Yeah, I think so. I think they went through a really nice period of stabilisation, and I know, Dan, you were forever frustrated with Tony Mowbray and sort of that fantastic first half of the season falling away and not getting there in the second. But I think that stabilisation job was crucial, because I think coming out of that now, it feels like there's a structure and that Blackburn have got some consistency, because for a long time it felt as though under the Venkies it was that full chaos mode where it was all just constant sort of turnover and bust. And now it feels as though they've got some consistency. They've really restructured and sorted themselves in the Championship. So I personally believe that Jon Dahl will stay. I understand what you're saying, Dan, about the frustrations, but I do think that he will see the project that he's building at Blackburn and the work that he's doing, and hopefully it's a good job, but hopefully it's not one of them that's so eye-catching that somebody goes, oh, well, that's a fantastic job. You know what I mean? He's not...
Yeah.
If you'd finished in the playoffs last season and come 4th, then somebody might have gone, oh, what a job he's done. But coming 7th, 8th, they go, well, it's about par for the course. It's where I thought Blackburn had finished. And so it might be that his job continues to go under the radar. That gives you another 12 months under him to just continue to develop and really get the most out of him. But yeah, I 100% think that if he does move on, the club feels so much more stable now to get that next appointment right again and just continue to move forward.
I think we've built that identity as well. I remember Gam mentioning that Rovers have this way of playing now, and I think we've now got before we appointed John Dahl Thomason, everyone was like, what manager are we ever going to go for? Do we get a Pulis who's been everywhere? Are we going to go for, one of these League One managers that had a really good GE? Do we look at Oxford? Do we look at someone along the lines that Ipswich went with McKenna, where you try and go into a youth coach and give him his first chance, or a coach at a bigger club? And, you mentioned that John Mowbray did. Whenever I always feel bad whenever I criticise Tony Mowbray, because he was incredible for this club. It just, his time come to a natural end here.
Sure.
And now we've got this identity where I am confident if John Dahl went, we'd get a manager that could keep his job going. Whether they do the same level of job, I don't know. But it's all about the financial situation for me. We still don't know whether the owners can put money in. They're having to go through the Indian High Court to even put money into the club at the moment. They're having to apply to do it. And so we're at this situation where we can't go and add any more money than the club's got. We basically have to say, look, I'm sending 5 million to keep the lights on. I'm sending this to pay the wages. I'm sending all this. So if that was sorted, I'd be very confident of John Dahl staying. It's just how long that takes. I'm no financial expert, never mind Indian financial expert. I don't know what's going on. I think the main issue is no one at the club massively knows what's going on, because it changes that much. It's like, we got Adam Wharton, Harry Picken and Smodic tied down to contracts. I didn't even know that were possible. I thought, money-wise, we'd be struggling. So where this money comes from, or where we find these, where we find ourselves within 12 months, I don't know. It could be really positive, and I could be talking about John Dahl's big future here. It's just uncertainty, and that's the worst thing, not knowing what's going on. Once we find out what's what, I'll be more relaxed, I'll be happy, and I'll feel a bit more confident if John Dahl did go.
Well, I look forward to seeing the happy and confident Dan, because it'd be nice to see him really tell me that you're going to drive forward and that it's a positive future coming.
Well, fingers crossed, we'll see, won't we?
Let's hope so. Dan, it's been so great to have your thoughts on it. Love your stuff on Rovers Chat, and I encourage everyone to go subscribe to Rovers Chat on YouTube, and look forward to catching up with you later in the season, pal.
No, thanks, Gav. Thanks, Ollie. Always a pleasure being on.
Cheers, mate. Delighted to bring in our next guest, which is Matt Lax from the excellent New York Talk on Rotherham United podcast. Good evening to you, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. I suppose, first of all, let's get your reaction on Leam Richardson's appointment as Miller's boss.
I'm happy with the appointment. I think it's a solid appointment. I like what he did at Wigan up until, I think, when things started to go crazy at the club. I think he was very, very harshly sacked. I think that's polite. The fact it took 4 weeks blows my mind, and I'll never understand the situation, because I think if you offered Leam Richardson the day after Matt Taylor got sacked, he would probably have taken the job. I understand you've got to do your due diligence and you've got to check out other candidates. I get that, but we are where we are. We're twice as many points worse off than we were when Matt Taylor left, with 5 less games, if you count, including last night as well. But yeah, I think he's the right man. If we go down, which is likely at this stage, I think he's a good man for League One as well. So I think it works from both sides. I think it's a clever appointment in the end. Some fans won't be happy about it, but that's because you look at the names that were potentially out there. But personally, I can't argue with the appointment at all. I think it could be a perfect fit for us. Time will tell, obviously, but I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you've got to look at what Leam Richardson has done. Excuse me, I'm going to cough any moment. Maybe a bit later. I know. It's like when the goalkeepers take the goal kicks, right? When Leam Richardson was at Wigan, he did absolutely stunning work I would argue, actually keeping them up in 2021 when he had a skeletal staff and so much financial certainty around the club, and even the top youth players had been sort of cherry-picked, let alone the senior players. That was a phenomenal achievement, and winning the title the following season when there was a bit of money was extraordinary. I do have, if Rotherham United are looking at championship level, I look at the impact Marty Cifuentes has made at QPR. I look at the impact Danny Röhl has made at Sheffield Wednesday, and I do have some reservations from the outside about whether Leam Richardson has the tactical acumen to compete with those sorts of managers who are operating at a similar level to Rotherham.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He has been chosen at the Championship level, but it's quite a small sample size. What was it, 15, 20 games, like something like that. So we don't have a massive sample size to look at from that. I think he suits us probably better than Matt Taylor does. He's very much the Paul Warne mould. He's a very similar manager to Paul Warne. I think his man management style is very, very good, and that's where we're lost at the minute. You know, we can accept, every fan can accept losing. But it's sort of the manner of the way we're doing things at the minute. If we're going to go down, let's go down swinging. You know, let's not go down having laid on floor for 45 games of the season, and that's where we are at the minute. You know what I mean? That's the situation we find ourselves in. At the minute.
Carlisle didn't do too bad. I appreciate the West Brom game wasn't great, but you look at the second half performance against Leeds. You look at performance against my lot, Birmingham probably created 3 times more chances than we did in that game. I wouldn't necessarily say under Wayne Carlisle the team had given up without a fight.
That, to be
True,
fair,
but then
that might be more of a message about Birmingham than
That's all I have to say.
But for those, there's the whole game where we were just in a shadow of a Championship football team. So you're right. It's difficult because against Swansea, for example, we were good until the red card. But then when the red card came, it was a matter of just laying down. There was no fight, not a massive amount of fight from the 10 men against the Swansea team that wasn't very good. Okay. We don't feel like we're. This sounds like a cheesy line that we hear from Man U fans. We don't feel like we're represented at the minute as fans on the pitch. Okay. The team are not a Rotherham United team at the minute, or they're not a good team in full stop at the minute. But we're not seeing what we want to see from a football team. There's no fight for the shirt. There's no sort of drive or idea about what we're wanting to do. And I think that's what Leam Richardson will bring in. I think, and I think he can. I'm hoping he can implement that kind of thing pretty quickly because it's a personal thing. It's not a tactical issue necessarily. It's a personal thing. And hopefully he's already sort of said, you know, day offs have been cancelled already. It's, you know, working every minute of the day that we possibly can. And that's what we need to see. And we just need to pick up something. We're 8 points adrift now before the Wednesday night games. If QPR pick up something, it'll be even worse. So it is just a matter of picking up something as soon as possible, get us back in the fight. What can he do in January? Will he get a bit of money to spend? I don't know. Will we move out players to again try and get a bit of cash in the door? We just need to stay in touch between now and January and hope that we can have a good January and then get back closer because we're in danger of being double-digit points adrift if things keep going the way they are.
Ollie, I'm not going to move the conversation for Rotherham on to the likelihood of League One next season, even though I do consider it a likelihood at this stage, because I still think we should be looking at it in terms of can they make a fight of staying up? And for that to happen, I think Rotherham need much more squad depth, because I think when everyone's fit, fresh, suspension-free, all the rest of it, I actually think they've got quite a competitive first 11. But when they're playing teams like Leicester are bringing like former Bundesliga and Premier League top goal scorers off the bench. And Rotherham, with all due respect, are bringing, for example, I'm not picking on him, but Kieran McGuckin was on loan at Scarborough last season. And that's all credit to Kieran McGuckin for getting into a Championship squad, and hopefully he has a great career. But it just shows there's a massive disparity that Rotherham are working with at the moment. And they've got to try and bring in a few players just so that they've got a bit more depth, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's, you know, it's not dissimilar to the position that I would describe my team, Sheffield United, as being in the Premier League, where, you know, we've changed our manager very similarly. We had all the same issues about lacking identity. And we've not made the change to say we're going to stay up. We've made the change to say, let's go down with some respect. Let's go down with a little bit of belief so that it's not just on the floor when you hit the next division. You've got to be able to go and to bounce back. And I do think that's a similar position to Rotherham. I think they're going to be trying to get that reaction. They'll want to stay within touching distance. They'll want it to be respectable, even if it does end up going down. But I think for me, what really sums up is the central defence position. Like, again, when everybody's fit, it feels strong. You know, Blackett had started the season really well. Cameron Humphreys, we know the talent that he's got. But suddenly you're seeing a back four that's got Daniel Ayala playing for the first time in however long. And I know he's not had his best performance at the weekend. You know, you've got people like Grant Hall coming in, and they're good players, but you can't rely on them. There's no fitness. There's no longevity in the planning of who's coming in. So it's got to be about building squad depth. It's got to be about making sure that when the players do drop down injured, because they're going to in the Championship, the next ones up aren't that big of a drop-off, that you go from being a competitive lower half team to being a bottom of the league team, really. And that's the difficulty. So that's where I see Rotherham's big problem. It's injuries have hit and there's just nothing coming in to really try and replace those, particularly at the back, where it just feels like it's been a constant churn of central defenders who are progressively getting worse every time a new one comes in. That's fair, Matt? Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Matt Taylor took a gamble in the summer by players that are aging and re-signing players that have got injury problems. I mean, the issue at right back is magnified. So you've got Lee Peltier, who is as solid as they come as a right back, but he can't play 3 games a week, which means, and then we've got Dexter McKees, who has got he's got a great future ahead of him, but he needs taken out the firing line. But you can't take him out of the firing line because you can't put Peltier there to play 2 games in 4 days. And that's the situation we're finding ourselves in. You know, Shaw had a decent game last night, to be fair, but he probably can't play Saturday now because of the situation he's in. And Ayala's probably in the same situation. He's put money in other places. So he spent £1 million on Nombe, which has always been very, very good. He's probably spent a lot of wages on Cafu, who has again been injured. And I think that's probably taken away where you need players at the centre-half position. Grant Hall's probably not on very much money because of his injury situation, but we can't play him half of the time because he just can't stay fit for 5 minutes. And Grant, to be fair, and this might sound harsh, Grant Hall's not good enough to want to rely on one game every few weeks. He's an all right defender. He's decent, but he's not that good to warrant that kind of risk.
Yeah.
And he's signed them all on short-term contracts. And this is always an issue. We've signed loads of players on short-term contracts. When things go rough, are they going to stand up? Because they're not going to be there for a few months. And that's sort of where we are. I'm not convinced.
Have you got a lot of players out of contract in the summer, Matt? Then?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, at least that's something. So you've got a blank sheet of paper potentially for Leam Richardson if it is League One next year.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's for me. That's what's partially costing us now. It was such a short-term view for this season that we're then looking ahead to next season. And not only got players out of contract. If we go down, Victor's not staying, and rightly so. If we go down, Cameron Humphreys might not stay because why should he? You're losing all your best players. Well, yeah, we'll get some money for them, but these players won't want to play in League One. So then, not only are you losing all your contract players, what happens to actually decent players that maybe don't want to take that drop down because they've earned their right to play?
Yeah. Do you think there's a chance that some of those go in January rather than seeing their value decrease? So Victor in particular is one that I'm going to sort of labour the point on. I think there might be somewhere he might want to go. But he's one that obviously he stands out as just being one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship for me. You know, he's a fantastic shot stopper. I really rate him highly. He's had international recognition now. So clearly he's going to be on the radar for a lot of them. Do you feel as though if you wait till the summer for him to move on, his value decreases as a League One goalkeeper compared to maybe selling from a relative position of strength in January to somebody who needs it?
Absolutely. If I was 2 points, if I was Victor, I would be asking my agent to get me a move in January, to try and get a move in January. If I'm Liam Richardson, I'm probably thinking, right, if I can move this guy out for 4 or 5 million quid, something like that, I can build a squad in January that might give me half a chance to stay up this season, but will give me a damn good chance to get promoted from League One. Yeah. He's our only sale asset right now. Cameron Humphreys would be at some point, but he's injured.
When's he back, Cam Humphreys, by the way, Matt?
I've heard he's back on grass, but I've also heard Matt Taylor said it would look in February, March time. So I don't know. We'll find out.
Unless his hospital bed's on grass, that wouldn't be right.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. Look, when Victor leaves, it'll break my heart. He'll go down as one of my favourite players. I just love everything about him. But if he can get us a lot of money and maybe help us stay up, or maybe help us certainly next season, you've got to accept that's life, haven't you? And you're right. If he goes in, so let's say he's worth 4 million quid, he's worth half that as a League One player. So you've got to make sure. We have, as a club, have been terrible at cashing out. Basically, it's now time to put your heads on, take your heart out of it, and say, right, this is best for us, but it's probably best for Victor as well. Let's all shake hands, move on, and hopefully improve.
I think for me, that's just a really good way of looking at it. I was going to bring this up with Dan before, actually, when he was on talking about Blackburn and how much actually they've got cash flow issues, financial issues. How much would they have benefited if 6 months earlier they'd sold Brereton Diaz? How much would they have benefited from the money that comes in from those kind of transfers? You gamble, you wait 6 months, and you lose out on such a huge sum of money that for any club in the Championship is going to make a difference. But for Rotherham, it really feels as though 4 million quid compared to 2 is a massive difference maker in their level of recruitment for the summer and what they can do to build a Championship ready squad, because it's at that time now where Rotherham want to be a Championship ready club. It feels as though everything's geared towards the club taking that step and being a consistent Championship team. But every time they just fall short on that sort of budget, on that squad building, and they need someone to help them take that next step. And the sale of Victor could be what can really drive a difference in that and keep you as a stable Championship team for a few years.
Yeah, I think that was Matt Taylor's plan, for example, Nombe, the £1 million on Nombe, that we spent that because hopefully in 2 years' time we can more than double that or whatever. So it's a model we've been hoping to get for several years, but we just made a mess of it. You know, you let Dan Barlas get 6 months to the end of his contract, you're getting next to nothing on his value. Chio went for free last summer. We've been almost really good at it, but then we just haven't actually got the sort of deals over the line at the time. So yeah, it's got to be the way forward for a club of our size and a club trying to spend sensibly. This is the way to do it, and it's like I said, it'd be sad to see these players leave, but it'll be good at the same time to see them progress their career and go be superstars, hopefully.
Yeah, I completely echo Ollie's point about the importance of cashing in on your big assets, as much as sometimes it's unpopular with fans because you want your best players at the club. I completely agree on that point, as long as it's for the right price, of course. I do want to ask you though, Matt, last January was a really crucial one for Rotherham in helping you stay up. What do you think you're going to need this year?
Well, we're probably going to need no keeper because Victor will probably leave. We need at least one fit centre half that's got a bit more pace than Sean Morrison, which isn't hard. The one thing that we are crying out for is wingers. I think when Matt Taylor first started the season, I think he was going to play a 3-5-2. I think that's what he's had his heart set out on, and it didn't work. So we had to change to what is basically a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. We've got Fred Onyedimna, who is injured, obviously, except he is, and Arvin Appiah as your 2 wingers at the football club. Shane Ferguson, but he's been out for 6 months. So we've got one fit winger at the football club at the minute. You can't play 4-2-3-1, 4-3 with one fit winger, or even 3 wingers at the club. It's still not enough.
It doesn't quite work, does it? No.
So we're just desperate for some width. Nombe could do a job, but you don't want to pay £1 million and play him out of position. So yeah, wingers. We need probably at least 2 wingers, possibly 3 wingers. A lot of the loan players are going to go back. I think Dexter will go back because he just needs taken out of the firing line. He just needs to. Seb Revens from Villa's been okay, but again in January, the loan windows in January tend to be quite good. So can we do better than Seb Reven as a loan for the last 6 months of the season? That'd be quite interesting. Or
buying another winger and bring Cohen Bramwell back to left back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he played left wing yesterday, and Bramwell's got the pace that we'd all dream of, but he's not a winger. He looked really lost last night. He was making runs at the wrong time and things this, that, and the other. He is so much better as a left back. Even getting him as left back and a proper winger in front of him, he really does tend to flourish. So the wide areas, both in attack and defence, are the areas that we are desperate to improve on, and then hopefully get some injuries back. Will hopefully see us in a fight at least.
Absolutely. Hopefully. Well, let's hope Rotherham can make those additions to make a fight out of the remainder of the season. Matt, thanks so much for joining us to bring your insight from the New York Talk podcast. Everyone go subscribe to the podcast. And thanks for joining us, mate.
No problem at all. Anytime, boys.
Cheers. Thanks to my co-host as well, Ollie Mann from the Sheff United Way. Thanks to you for watching at home and to all our guests. This has been the Championship podcast of EFL Debate, and we'll see you again next week.